Hey guys, I am back outside today to film a video. If you are just now starting to watch Thrifty in OKC, I am a part-time reseller. I started selling on eBay in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. So I've been reselling for about 20 years. And though I am new to YouTube, I am not new to reselling. My husband and I have used our proceeds to pay off all our debt. And so I am usually sharing a little bit of thrift haul, a little bit of stuff to resell, a little bit of stuff I'm keeping, and maybe a few tips on how you can be successful doing a reselling gig, side hustle, even if you're doing it part-time. I always say I feel like it's well worth your time to build up a little bit of extra cash. If you are willing to work it, you can make, sky's the limit. As much as you want to work, you can make. I'm a little janky here. My hat's a little crazy today, but it's chilly outside, and I'm outside again, just like I was in the last video, because my child is inside listening to very loud cartoons, and I don't feel like trying to mess with getting him to stop. So anyway, today, I don't have anything for a haul to show you because I have not found anything in the last couple of weeks. I feel like the thrift gods might be telling me that I am overbought right now and do not need to have anything else, because I have not had luck. I found an item here or there, but really not very much. I have sold some, but I have not been listing as much. Most people list really crazy in the month of December. I actually spend a lot of time with family in the month of December, so I have not listed as much either. So I don't have a huge what's sold to show. So instead, I thought I might share for you guys how I decide where to sell what I'm going to sell. So I sell on Poshmark, Etsy, and eBay. I do not sell on Mercari. I know a lot of people sell on Mercari. I just don't know that I could add one more thing on to my mix. But anyway, so Poshmark, Etsy, eBay. So predominantly Etsy is for vintage or handmade. Since I am selling stuff that I have bought, I am typically selling vintage on there. On a very rare occasion, I might make something, but for the most part, I am selling something that I have purchased somewhere else. eBay, obviously, you can sell anything. Poshmark, you can sell mostly anything. There are some limits on different things now that they've opened it to housewares. I don't think you can sell everything, but you can sell quite a bit. So I sell on all three of those. So when I buy an item, the first thing that I look at is the item vintage? So if the answer is no, that means Etsy is out. It's off the table. I cannot sell it on Etsy if it's not vintage. It's got to go on eBay or on Poshmark. Then I ask myself, do I kind of know the comps for the item? So if it's newer item, not vintage, and vintage is 20 years or older, so it has to be 20 years or older for it to be considered vintage. If I do not know the comp price that I want, I research it and I can't find anything on it, which is unusual for a new item. You can almost always find some kind of comps on something that's newer. I would put it, if I can find good comps, especially if it's clothing and I feel like it's a trendy item, I would put it on Poshmark, especially if it's for the younger crowd. Not to say that there's not people who are older. You know, I'm 40 plus. I know there are ladies out there shopping on Poshmark and men who are above 40, but it is definitely probably appeals more. I feel like you have more younger shoppers on Poshmark than you do on eBay. So I factor that in as well. Is it a younger look? Is it a hot, trendy item? If it is, then it's probably going to go on Poshmark. If it isn't, then I might put it on eBay. If it is vintage and I feel like it is a really trendy item, especially during festival season, I might put something vintage on Poshmark. Or if it is vintage and I have no idea what to price it at, because sometimes you might find a very specialized vintage piece, I will put it on eBay and I will run it on an auction. I hardly ever do buy it now on eBay. You'll see a lot of videos where people say, do buy it now. And that's what they do. I mostly use eBay to liquidate things that I don't know what the value is. I cannot find something that is exactly the same, or if I can, it has a high value and I want to auction it in order to get as much as I can out of it. And that has worked well for me in the past. There have been times when I have considered a vintage item to put it on Etsy and then have thought, maybe I'll put it on eBay and start it at X. and run the auction and gotten much more than what I would have listed it for flat on Etsy. So that has happened a few videos back. If you guys see, I had a coat, a beautiful coat that had mink flowers on it. It was fabulous. Go back, watch about maybe a dozen videos back in a haul video that I had. And I actually was going to put that on Etsy and put it up for like $200, and I put it on eBay and it sold for over $500. So if you cannot find the value on something, I strongly encourage you to use eBay for that if you can't find comps on something. So that's my thing. Is it vintage? Is it not vintage? That's going to determine if it goes on Etsy. If it is vintage and I know or can guesstimate a value on it, 98% of the time I will put it on Etsy over Poshmark. And you might say, why is that? Etsy's a lot less work, quite honestly, for me. I do feel like you've got to have a little bit better pictures on Etsy. You are still building a shop and a brand just like you are on Poshmark. But on Etsy, I pay my 20 cents to list it. That 20 cents gets me 4 months of visibility on that listing. I do not have to share it. The other pro to listing vintage on Etsy for me over listing it on Poshmark is I have a ton of international sales. So I sell quite a few of my vintage items. I would say probably 50% of what I sell goes overseas. Poshmark does not have an overseas option. So if you are really wanting to sell vintage, you are cutting out a very large population of people who buy vintage. I know one of my top, probably 25% of what I sell goes to Australia. They do not have a lot of vintage stores from there, from what I've been told from Australian buyers, and their vintage is very expensive. So even paying shipping plus the item, to me, they are still getting a better deal than they would buying it there if they could even find it. So if you are listing vintage on Poshmark, I feel like you are missing an opportunity on an overseas buyer. Side note, don't be afraid to ship international. I hear a lot of people say they don't want to ship internationally. Again, you're limiting yourself if you're doing that on eBay or on Etsy. Ship internationally. You're going to sell a lot more. You're going to have a lot more opportunity. I don't sell as much internationally on eBay. I do sell some, but I don't sell as much as I do on Etsy. It's a huge part of my Etsy business. So Etsy is always going to be vintage that I know a flat price, that I can determine a value or guess what I want to get out of it. I know firmly what I want to get out of it. eBay, well, I'll put anything on eBay that I want to auction because I don't know what I can get out of it. We do a lot of Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards, old video games, vintage clothing, vintage items that I don't know, again, I can't determine the value. You saw my video recently, I sold little girls' dresses on there. And so that's kind of what I put on eBay. Poshmark is going to be mostly new trendy things. Again, I might put some more bohemian type things on there, especially when it gets close to music festival time, but I don't list a lot of vintage on Poshmark. Of course, anything designer, I typically will list on Poshmark over eBay. I feel like your newer things, I can get more for it on Poshmark than I can get for it on eBay. I feel like newer items, even designer things on eBay, a lot of times, people are looking for a bargain on eBay. I think people are on Poshmark too, but maybe not as much. I don't know. So that's probably awfully convoluted, but to recap one more time, Etsy vintage for things that I know the value of. eBay, anything that I think that might inspire an auction, and all you need are 2 bidders to get into a bidding war, and hopefully you can rack that charge up. And then Poshmark, mostly new things, designer things, or anything that is vintage that might be really, really trendy at the time. So I do encourage everybody, start out with one, but I would not stick to one. You will find as you do more, and I think I would probably find if I added on Mercari, because I know a lot of people do that one, that different things have different value depending on what site you're on. And you also, it's great because some weeks I'm not having any sales on Etsy or Poshmark, but I'm killing it on eBay, or vice versa. So they can kind of cover each other and help you generate a good income. Anyway, that's my short little video for the day. Hopefully it was helpful. And if you are debating on starting out on eBay, Poshmark, or Etsy, or if you've already started and you have a hard time determining what you want to list, what items on, hopefully that helps some of you guys out. If you liked what you saw, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I got like 20 subscribers last week, and that was the highlight of my life because I'm slowly trying to grow this up, especially for people, as I always say, who live in a little bit smaller of a city that can't find the Chloe works too, but the Chanel, the Gucci, and are trying to make a living reselling off of maybe just kind of odds and ends, bread and butter items, unusual things that they find. So subscribe if that's the kind of content you're looking to see. And thanks so much for watching today. Have a happy new year. See you next time. Bye.